Hi, this is Dan Burgette, and I'm responding to Christian's 5 questions. The first question is, when and why did I start sculpting? Well, I first started sculpting in 1980, and this was my first carving. Back then I was working for the National Park Service at George Rogers Clark National Historical Park in Vincennes, Indiana. And part of my duties was to dress up as a frontiersman, sit under a tree and whittle with a historically accurate knife, and talk to the tourists about the Revolutionary War. Well, I had a boss that came in from Redwood National Park, and his wife had a decoy that had been carved with a chainsaw. And I thought it'd be neat to have a decoy. So I went out in the woods and got a chunk of tulip poplar limb, and I carved my first canvas back decoy here with my historically accurate tomahawk. And as you can see, it's a very classic beginner's, not rounded sort of a thing. But that was the start, and based on that, my wife got me some X-Acto knives, and I went on from there. So that's how I got started into sculpting. And I like the questions asking about sculpting, because I think everything we do is sculpture. Whether it's the interpretive stuff like Lynn Branson does, the decoys that Tom Matus or Jet Bernay, some of those guys do, it's all sculpture. So think of yourself as a sculptor, not just as a carver. Okay, next question is, what makes you choose one medium versus another for a project? And for me, that's kind of an open-ended question, because it depends on what I'm wanting to do. And I've played with forging stainless steel or titanium to sport birds. I've played with soapstone. I've played with other things other than wood, and I've combined some of those things. And the reason Kristen asked that question is because she knows that right now I'm not doing a wood carving. I'm actually carving out of Bitch Creek jade. And Bitch Creek is about 10 miles north of where I live. It comes off the west side of the Teton Mountains, and it has these boulders of jade. And it's not a true jade. It's a nephrite jade, but it's very hard. It is something that's thin. And if you make it thin, it's translucent. Here I have a little piece hanging up in the window. You can see the light coming through it. And this particular piece isn't a very pure jade. Sometimes this jade is a real apple green. This has a lot of dark, dark things in it. And so the whole thing looks pretty black. Well, I've had this boulder for several years, wanting to do something with it, and so anyhow I finally figured out that I could do a black swift, and so I've been working on this. I'm certainly on a new learning curve. It's very hard. But it's kind of neat because it's very strong. Being hard, it's on the Mow scale is about a 6, and so you need diamond tools to work with it. And so I started out with just an angle grinder with a diamond wheel on it, and started carving from that. And now I'm into the finer stuff, and so I have burrs that are full of diamonds, and that's carving. So anyhow, it depends on whatever medium I have, and sometimes it's the medium itself, because I've been wanting to carve rocks. I really like the work of Steve Kestrel, who carves hard rock, and it's something that it's a whole new set of tools, but it's the same skills as still doing sculpture. And so anyhow, I'm really liking this carving the jade. We'll see where it goes, and I should be able to polish it up to about 3000 grit and make it nice and smooth where I want it, but I'll leave some of the rock a little bit rough. So that's what I'm doing right now. Let's see here. Next question is, what's some of the best or worst advice you've received for carving or sculpting? For me, I don't have an art background, and so the World Show in Ocean City has been huge to my development as an artist. And there we have access to these top-ranked artists and sculptors, and they're really open to helping us out. And one that's helped me probably more than any other is Pete Palumbo. And one of the things that I have on my wall here in my studio is what he told me. He says the goal of sculpture is to activate space using positive and negative space. And I've referred back to that over the years many times. I've kind of added one that I came up with myself, saying, you know, since I'm an interpretive carver more than the decorative, it says, I am not trying to carve birds as much as I am trying to create sculptures that the viewer will feel are birdy. And so that kind of goes into what I'm doing with this jade piece. The jade is extremely hard, and I'm not sure that I can do fine detail around the eyes and polish those eyes. But with interpretive, the artist decides how much information you're going to give. I want the profile to look like a swift, and so the beak needs to be pretty good, but it's just kind of a suggestion of where the eyes are, and people are still going to read that as a swift, and so that's good enough for what I'm doing here. So I'm probably not going to try to do eyes on this, especially since it's my first jade carving. Okay, another question is, what do you listen to while you're working in your studio or workshop? I listen to music all the time. I did have a serious account where I listened to a lot of bluegrass. A couple of years ago, my kids gave me a Spotify subscription for Christmas, and so I've been playing with a lot of old 60s folk singers and some of that, and you know, some country, Guy Clark, John Prine, some of those folks. But it's kind of a wide variety, but I do listen to music all the time. Bonus question is, describe or demonstrate a tip, trick, or method you find especially helpful in your process. And I can't really come up with just one, but the advice I would give is to grab hold of other people that are more skilled or more experienced than you are and become their friend. And I did that years ago with Ashley Gray, and when I get in a jam, I call Ashley, because Ashley's been there, done that, and he has 1,000 tricks that I never would have thought of. And so talking to having, you know, the Pete Palumbos critique your work, having a friend you can call when you get in a jam, that's the best thing. So anyhow, that's kind of what I'm doing here while we're avoiding the virus. And we're waiting for spring to come out here in Idaho. But anyhow, have a good one.